Hello and welcome. My name is Alan, and we are back with more members of the United States Supreme Court. Today, we are looking at the final two members of the Morrison Waite Court, the final two associate justices added under his stewardship as Chief Justice. Now, the first one we want to look at is Associate Justice Samuel Blatchford. He was born on March the 9th, 1820 in Auburn, New York. The eldest of five children to Julia Ann Blatchford and Richard Milford Blatchford, who was, Now, he would be a talented individual, would enroll in Columbia College, now known as Columbia University, one of the Ivy League schools, when he was 13 years of age, and would graduate in 1837. So, at the age of 17. Blatchford would then serve as secretary to the governor of New York, William Seward, and studied law. So remember, Seward, if you are unaware, is one of the cabinet members for President Abraham Lincoln. So this was before the Civil War or anything broke out, though. But anyway, Blatchford would eventually enter private practice as a lawyer. In May of 1867, President Andrew Johnson appointed Blatchford to the U.S. District Court in the Southern District of New York, which is the federal trial level court for New York City area. So he received his appointment during a recess of the Senate, where he was formally nominated and confirmed 2 months later. Blatchford would spend over a decade at the Southern District of New York, and in February of 1878, President Rutherford B. Hayes would nominate him to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit. The Senate confirmed him a few weeks later. After 4 years on the Second Circuit, Blatchford would then be nominated to the U.S. Supreme Court by President Chester A. Arthur on March the 18th, 1882. He would be the second and last Supreme Court member successful nomination to the Supreme Court by Arthur. Blatchford would be confirmed on March the 22nd and take the judicial oath at the start of the following month. He would spend a while on the Supreme Court. He would die during the summer recess of the court on July 7th, 1893 in Newport, Rhode Island. But now, let's get a little further look at Blatchford. As we said he was an associate justice from New York. He would replace Justice Ward Hunt and spend a total of 11 years and 95 days on the court, dying in office. So, yeah. But he was known to be very talented and extremely good on the Supreme Court and the other courts he sat on. So, yeah. But that would be Samuel Blatchford. Now, our other individual we're looking at is the last Associate Justice to freshly enter under Chief Justice Morrison Waite. He is Lucius Quintus Cincinnatus Lamar. So yeah, Lucius Quintus Cincinnatus Lamar. Now, he would be born on September the 17th, 1825 in Putnam County, Georgia, near the town of Eatonton. Now, Lamar was actually the second with that name. His father was the first, Lucius Quintus Cincinnatus Lamar. And with his relationship to Sarah Bird, he would be born. Now, Lamar in Putnam County would be born on a plantation in Georgia. So it's one of these big expanses of land where a lot of crops are grown by slaves. So yeah, this is still pre-Civil War when he is born. Now, Lamar would graduate from Emory College, now known as Emory University, in 1845, so at the age of 20, and was admitted to the Georgia bar 2 years later. Over the next decade, Lamar would take a number of steps in his political career while practicing law and establishing a cotton plantation of his own in Mississippi. Lamar would be elected to the United States House of Representatives in 1857 and served there during the last few years before the Civil War. As the conflict became clear it would happen, Lamar would resign his seat and wrote the Mississippi Ordinance of Secession, kind of giving reasons as to why Mississippi would secede. During the Civil War, Lamar served in the Confederate Army. He also worked as a diplomat and tried to persuade European nations to recognize the Confederacy. When the war ended in 1865, Lamar was pardoned and returned to practicing law. He also taught at the University of Mississippi between 1866 and 1870. He, in 1873, Lamar would make his political comeback by rejoining the House of Representatives over a decade after he'd resigned from the body. He would be there for 2 terms before going to the U.S. Senate in 1877. Lamar would spend 8 years in the Senate. So at least one full term, and then part of another. In early 1885, President Grover Cleveland would appoint him as the U.S. Secretary of the Interior for Cleveland's own cabinet. Less than 3 years later, December 6, 1887, Cleveland nominated Lamar to the Supreme Court. The Senate would confirm him on January 16th of 1888 in a 32-28 vote, so a tight one. But he would take the judicial oath 2 days later and become the first former Confederate official to serve on the Supreme Court, and would be there for almost exactly 5 years. He would die on January the 23rd, 1893, in what is now Macon, Georgia. So, yeah. Looking at his term, he was the last Associate Justice to come into the Supreme Court under Morrison Waite, and would be the first appointment to the Supreme Court by Grover Cleveland. He would be from Mississippi, replacing Associate Justice William Burnham Woods. And would be on the court for 5 years and 5 days, dying while still on the court. So at this point, we're seeing a lot of justices just die while still on the bench. But yeah. And that was a look at Lucius Quintus Cincinnatus Lamar the second, technically. But yeah, born and died in Georgia, but would represent Mississippi. But yeah, and that is our look at all the associate justices that would come into play under Morrison Waite. Next Supreme Court episode, we'll be looking at the important cases of the Waite Court. But with that done, as always, educate thyself, think, read, study, learn. Someone tells you something you have trouble believing, ask them to cite their sources. I'll be putting sources and links in the description box below the video. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you all in the next one. Until then, later.